Welcome to another episode of the Harder to Breathe podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dusick. I was the founding drummer of Maroon 5, but I'm now a registered therapist, author, coach, speaker, and mental health advocate. With me, as always, is my co-host, Duck Maillard. How you doing, Duck?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing well. As you can see, I'm rocking my Yankee hat today in honor of today's guest, and also because we remembered how to win a game. Yankees had a little bit of a slide and been a little rough, but we're winning again, and so now I can rock it proudly here in LA.
It's funny, our Sunday morning softball game, which I don't know if people know that sometimes you and I play Sunday morning softball together, but we have half the guys out there wearing Dodger hats and the other half wearing Yankees and Mets hats. A lot of New York transplants in that game. Absolutely. This game, it's my dad's game. He's been playing out there for 30 years. I joined just maybe 5-10 years ago. It's a lot of Jews on the west side of LA.
Known for their athletic prowess.
Absolutely. It's part of the reason why I played that game is because being in my 40s and being somewhat athletic makes me feel like an absolute stud.
Right. I was going to say, we have to clarify. We don't just play in that game. We dominate that game.
Oh, yes.
We rule. Locking down the hot corner, whatever I can do to contribute.
Absolutely. It's high stakes, that game, and we are at the top we're the cream of the crop.
Yeah. But we've had a really busy month. We're recording this at the end of July right now. We've got, by the time this episode comes out, we've already had some pretty awesome episodes air. All of our episodes are awesome, but lately we've really hit a stride, and it got me thinking about mental health in popular culture, because that's the kind of the space that we're trying to live in. And I wanted to ask you, this is really out of left field, but we're both big movie fans. I know you watched a ton of movies on the road, and when you were with Maroon 5 and things like that. I was curious if there's any movies that you think of that really represent either mental health or therapy really well, because I think, obviously, I think the go-to is Good Will Hunting, where everybody sees, a big breakthrough like that. And obviously that's got to be crack to a therapist. I got him to cry and I got the moment. But I was curious if there's any any movies that you think of in terms of, when you were becoming a therapist, that you kind of go, oh, it isn't really like that, or it is really like that. Or if there's maybe shows that you're watching now that represent therapy well, anything like that.
It's funny you said that, because immediately when you asked that question, I was thinking of Good Will Hunting, of course, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Being, we're children of the 90s, of course. Good Will Hunting, Fight Club,
known for its mental health message.
Yeah, Swingers. What were the other big movies that just coming of age kind of, anyway. Yeah. Anyway, but Good Will Hunting, to me, I've had a whole arc with that movie in terms of my relationship to it.
Really?
And since I've been a therapist, it's shifted a bit, and it's always been a positive relationship with that movie. But I think when it came out, it was probably mid-90s, right? Good Will Hunting?
Yeah, 97, I'm going to say.
97. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was maybe close to 20 years old already, and in the band, and I think probably in between record deals, and kind of soul searching, who am I? Yeah. Is music me, or am I more than that kind of thing? And I remember really connecting with the movie and thinking it was wonderful. But at the time, thinking the big breakthrough at the end of the movie where, Robin Williams says all that stuff, it's not your fault.
Right.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I remember at the time going, this is a great cinematic moment.
Right.
But is this real? I mean, can you really just do that with a client? Just say, it's not your fault. Right. Just say that 10 times.
Just
it's not
remind
your fault.
them, yeah.
And then eventually they have a breakthrough and they realize it's not their fault. Right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, it works for the movie, but maybe that's not really realistic in terms of what therapy is. Mm-hmm. But I've probably watched that movie about 100 times, because I can't not watch it when it's on TV, because it's just so engaging.
The definition of a rewatchable, that anytime it's on, you're like, I'll put it on for 20 minutes,
Right, exactly. However, I am a therapist now, and I realize that I think that movie inspired me in some ways, long before I had a passion for therapy. Just the relationship between those two characters was definitely interesting and inspiring to me in terms of what work two men in a room together can do.
Yeah.
Especially because historically men are not comfortable with vulnerability. And you've got Robin Williams' character who has his own walls up, obviously, and is this tough. They're both from this tough neighborhood. And then you've got this kid who's got all of his walls up. He's just not going to go there at all until he finally does. And so I think that was an early indication that the fact that I connected with that was an indication that therapy and being in that space was something that I was intrigued by at the very least. But watching that scene again for the 100th time as a therapist, I realized what was going on that I didn't notice the first 99 times, because the entire movie is rapport building, right? They're bonding and connecting in that space. And you see the walls coming down slowly but surely as Robin Williams opens up more to him and shares vulnerability with him, starting with that scene where he gets triggered and he chokes him because he says something about his wife.
Steps over the line,
which you would obviously, as a therapist, never do.
Right. But if you're seeing a kid from Southie, he might respect you more than a client here in Los Angeles. You'd be sued.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, you have to sort of suspend your disbelief, but you see how the vulnerability of the therapist in the room, the human element of that allows the client to feel more connected to him in time. Mm-hmm. And there's this sort of father-son relationship building throughout the movie. And what is the essential wound that the Matt Damon character has experienced? It's abandonment, right? Mm-hmm. Being physically abandoned, physically abused, emotionally abandoned, not being able to depend on the people that he's supposed to depend on most are the people that harmed him the most, right?
Yeah.
And so he's got this bond with his friends, his brothers, that he, can't trust anyone else in the world but them, right? But here's this guy who is investing so much in him, and slowly over time, he's starting to believe that this person actually cares about him, right? What happens right before that scene when he says it's not your fault? He walks up to the door, Matt Damon's character, and he hears the conversation through the door between Robin Williams' character and the professor, right? And he's pushing him, he needs to get out there. He needs to make more out of his life. And he's like, if you push him, if you ride him, you're going to break him. He's in a vulnerable position. He's not ready for that. And he's like, oh, don't give me that crap. I am what I am today because people pushed me and, rided me.
Are you doing a little Stellan Skarsgård accent there? You're like, don't push me that, Sean. Don't tell me that crap. It was impressive. I heard it. Anyway.
Was it? Okay. Yeah, no, I can do a voice every now and then.
Yeah.
If I'm not too self-conscious about it. And Robin Williams in that moment, he stands up for him and he protects him in the way that his parents never did.
Yeah. And
so when he walks into that room, into that door, and Robin Williams is taken aback, he didn't realize he was there. He realizes he was outside there listening to this whole conversation. And he just heard me very vehemently and very passionately defending him and protecting him. And he recognized in that moment, this is my in.
Yeah.
This is the moment at which I can do this. It wouldn't have had the impact 90 minutes earlier. Right?
That's a really great insight. I've watched the movie as much as you have, and I don't think I saw the rapport building, obviously. One of my favorite parts in that movie is, I think just later in that scene where he's talking about his father abusing him, and he says he used to just come home and he'd put down a wrench and a belt and he'd say, choose. And Robin Williams says, well, I got to go with the belt on that one. And Matt says, I choose the wrench. And he says, why? He says, because fuck him, that's why. And it's like, it chokes me up now to think about it, because it's like the defiance, and Robin's character says, yeah, I feel you. Like they connect over that because he had experience with abuse too. But for you as a therapist to see that as not in a cheap way, but as something that as a therapist he can capitalize on to finally break through that wall, it shows the therapist mind that I as an amateur aren't thinking that way. It's interesting.
Well, I doubt that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck studied the inner workings of psychotherapy in terms of what a therapist would be trained to do necessarily. They're thinking of it in terms of the plot points and how you get to that moment of breakthrough cinematically. However, there's a lot of crossover between those things, and I have a greater appreciation for it now because as a therapist, your first job is rapport building.
Yeah.
Right? It has to be a safe space, and a lot of, depending on your orientation, a lot of people would say just even the relationship itself can be the healing element, especially for people that have trauma that is attachment-based trauma,
Just having a friend to talk to, or someone to talk to, just having that camaraderie is enough.
Well, having
sometimes.
a secure attachment, maybe for the first time in your life, somebody you can trust, somebody who is not going to exploit you in any way, is only going to be there to be a facilitator of your healing, and to give you what we call unconditional positive regard, which is therapists speak for unconditional love.
Yeah. I'm not going to judge you, even if you say the things that you think are horrible or really embarrassing or anything.
That in and of itself is deeply healing, especially if you never had that from your caregivers. And so understanding, that relationship better now, when I watch that movie, you're first trying to create that with your client, and then you're looking for opportunities, because I think I became a therapist thinking 99% of the job is being empathic, being compassionate, allowing somebody to just share things with you and go through their own process. And that is true to a certain extent. But what I didn't anticipate was how much there are moments when you need to push your client.
Yeah.
When you need to recognize the opportunity to give them feedback or to say something that is going to shift the paradigm, because you have established that relationship and they're ready for it. And so it's just exciting to me, when you see that. Obviously it's just a movie, it's just, these are fictional characters, but that stuff happens in therapy all the time. And that is what makes therapy great, and what can create breakthroughs for people in their lives in therapy. It's not every client, it's not every therapist, it's not certainly not every session. I mean, with some clients it might happen a month in, for some it might happen 6 months in. But I don't know. It's just something that makes the job really exciting and interesting for me. And you look for those opportunities when you're doing the work. And certainly as a client, you look for those opportunities.
And it's also one of those great movies that changes over time for you, both just as a human. We saw that movie, like you say, we were both 20. Absolutely, we associate with the Will Hunting character, partially because we all regard ourselves as geniuses and think that we have we have some secret thing. But now, 20 years later, I think, at least personally, I connect more with Sean and his struggle of trying to reach a younger kid who's making the same mistakes that he's seen and wants to save and wants to protect him. And I love it when a movie changes over time for you in terms of your own relationship with it and what characters you relate to. It's great. Speaking of which, by the way, an honorable mention to a really small movie called Win-Win, a Paul Giamatti movie about he's a wrestling coach, random, but he has the best depiction of a panic attack on film that I think I've ever seen. It's so visceral and so real. He's jogging with a friend and he suddenly can't breathe. They think he's having a heart attack, but it's just so palpable and so, and there's almost humor in it in the end because his friend's trying to take care of him. And but I remember watching that and being like, that's a real panic attack. I've had panic attacks and I know what that feels like. So I love seeing the world of mental health and therapy represented on screen accurately and in a way that might make someone else say, hey, that's a panic attack. That's happened to me. I know what that's like. I can empathize with that character. So
I haven't seen that movie, and I wonder.
I recommend it.
Sometimes when you see something depicted on film so well, it can be triggering. It
was triggering for me. It was like my stomach dropped out, and I go, oh, I know what he's going through. Like I know that feeling. Whew. It took me a minute to kind of get over that scene, but it still sits with me 10, 15 years later.
Like, I'll tell you what the most uncomfortable watch is for me when it comes to that kind of thing.
Magnolia.
Well, for other reasons. Maybe.
Yeah, right.
No, but I was going to say Leaving Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
That's a movie that has a whole other meaning to me now as a sober person than it did when I saw it the first time. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've ever seen a more realistic and more painful depiction of what alcoholism really looks like than that movie. Just the gritty, really horrible aspects of it, not just the sort of romanticized version of it that you see often of like, right. A Star is Born, like it's the tortured artist, and he's just it's. I guess there's some gritty stuff in that movie too, but he pisses himself on stage. Yeah. But Leaving Las Vegas was just like it was the what was moving about it was in the details, just the physicality of it, the
seedy hotel room in Vegas, and putting all the bottles in the suitcase and combining them into one horrible drink that he just downs. Yeah.
And waking up shaking and sweating and trying to down it as quickly as possible and trying to stop shaking before you can get back to sleep. Like, that is just, it gives me the chills just even thinking about it. It's not a place I want to go back to. But anyway, I don't know how we went down this road.
Because there's an intersection between, I mean, I'm an actor, you're a musician, entertainment, we have athletes and actors and things on the pod. So I thought it was interesting to ask you that. So, but we can ask Matt Damon and Ben Affleck next week because they're going to be our guest. No.
There is another movie that I'm just remembering now, and I don't remember if I have the name right, but we watched it in one of my classes in grad school. I think it's called Ordinary People.
Yeah, sure, with Timothy Hutton.
Timothy Hutton, yes.
Sure, yeah. Oscar winner Timothy Hutton for that film.
A lot of therapists talk about that movie as being a really accurate depiction of what good therapy could be. The relationship that he has with his therapist. And there's a similar moment in that movie when they've built rapport throughout the movie, and then it's Judd Hirsch, right?
Judd Hirsch.
Yeah. Yep. And I've only seen it once or twice, but there was a moment where he, similarly as to Good Will Hunting, where he recognizes that their rapport has gotten to a place where they're bonded and connected, and then he can have a breakthrough with them. And it's kind of the centerpiece of the movie, even though obviously the family is the storyline, but that relationship with the therapist is pivotal. I'll have to go back and watch that again now that you asked that question.
Yeah. I'm glad I can inspire you to revisit the world of cinema.
That's your job.
Yeah.
All right. So today on the show, we have a really interesting conversation with an interesting guy who's another guy in the realm of entrepreneurship and the business, not corporate world, but building your own business and your own brand, whom we didn't know at first, if he'd be willing to go into other aspects of life than just the business that he does. And he was. And so we were nicely surprised. Yeah. His name is Brandon Steiner, and he's had a series of businesses all in the sports and sports collectibles area.
If you're a sports fan at all, you know the name Steiner Sports. He kind of dominates the collectibles market,
especially in New York, which is why you're wearing your Yankees hat.
Boom, baby. Sorry, that was very macho.
Well, Steiner Sports, he started a long time ago. That became Steiner Collectibles. He has a couple new companies, the Steiner Agency and Collectible Exchange, which he talks about a bit in the interview. He's also on the radio. He's on the Yes Network a lot, talking about sports and sports media. He's just got an interesting story coming from a poor background in Brooklyn, New York, and being a huge Yankees fan, and saving up money to go across the tracks to go to a Yankees game, and then eventually developing nightclubs with Mickey Mantle and other Yankee greats, which started him in this world of pairing athletes with events and then the collectibles being the memorabilia being an outgrowth of that. So he's obviously a very driven guy, very ambitious guy. He's had 3 best-selling books, and he's a keynote speaker. And he does a series of things that are all interesting, including charitable work. He helped create the College of Sport and Human Dynamics at his alma mater of Syracuse University. He has worked with the Family Services of Westchester, which focuses on social and mental health services. So it's great to have him on the show. It's a great conversation. Anything else you want to add before we just jump into it?
Just my normal disclaimer. Any comments, questions, ideas, thoughts about the show, drop us a line at hardertoreadpodcast@gmail.com. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe on all the platforms, and really rate us and leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts, because that really helps the people, the powers that be, see that people are watching and enjoying the show. So any chance you get, drop us a line and let us know how you're enjoying the show.
All right. Without further ado, our conversation with Brandon Steiner on the Harder to Breathe podcast. Brandon Steiner, welcome to the Harder to Breathe podcast. How you doing?
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. It's a beautiful day here in New York. See, my Duck's got his Yankee hat on, a little front runner. Now the Yankees won a few games in a row.
Excuse me, I had the hat on when we were losing 8 out of 10. I'm ride or die. So, but I did wear it specifically for you.
Talk about panic. I mean, boy, it doesn't take.
It happens every year, though. We start off strong, and then everybody gets hurt, and we lose Stanton for a month, and
this is going to go down that way. I've stopped kind of getting caught up in all the emotional distress here over the last few years, and just start watching the games, hoping my favorite players do well. Mm-hmm. Which is, a few guys that I work with and represent, and everybody else, to hell with it. I don't care. I'm just rooting for my guys. The team is too large an entity to get my arms wrapped around, and those days are kind of over, actually, for me. I'm more getting around the country. Going to be coming out your way soon with a couple of projects as well.
Oh, excellent. Awesome. Yeah, it's actually not to jump right into sports, but it's actually an interesting shift in fandom, I think, in this country, in this world, where people have stopped rooting as much for teams as it is they root for their favorite player, because there's so much player movement and things like that. People are going to follow LeBron wherever he goes. They're not necessarily a Cavs or a Lakers or a Heat fan. They just love LeBron. So it has been an interesting shift, but I've been Yankees since day one.
That's how it was for me as a kid. You rooted for a few of your favorite players. Hope they got some hits. Maybe the team won. If they did, then you had a good day. And I think sometimes, the sports has gotten huge. I'm not complaining, but on the other hand, it's gotten a little out of control. And I think that, this, I used to say, this sport is a business. Now I have to tell people this business is also a sport. I can't tell you how many interviews I've done. This sport thing is a business too. Oh, really? You think that? Yeah. Now this business thing is a sport. People have to remember it's fun. It's a game. It's supposed to be released. It's supposed to be kind of, forget about your troubles. You walk in and watch a couple hours of, some grown men and women competing, and hopefully it works out for you. Now you're betting, you're gambling, your life is coming to an end because your team was lost, your player got hurt. The only thing you should be upset about is your fantasy team didn't do well. I'll give you a sidebar on that. But it's gotten pretty serious. It's okay by me because I'm in the business of it. So let's get serious. But I look at some people like, calm down. And it kind of carries over because the pressure on the teams and things start getting crazy. But sports is fun, man. Sports is different. You're watching the Olympics and you're looking at rugby. I'm really into some of these oddball sports, which I haven't always been. But since I started the new company, Collectible Exchange, I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. I don't want to do what I already did. I want to do something different. So, I'm focusing on rugby, cricket, Savannah Bananas, Indy 500, drag racing. I'll jump into the NIL because it's new and it's different and it's so ridiculously stupid. Let me jump into that stupidity. Let's go pay some college players a ton of money. I was always a fan of paying the college players, but I'm not a fan of paying like some of the players and then not paying a lot of the others. Mm-hmm. I think they made a rule recently that's going to pay everybody something, but the whole thing's going to be generally off the charts, where some schools are going to have way too much money, other schools are not going to have any. You'll see a reduction of college athletics, no question. You will see schools opting out of the athletic game. And the big boys will survive and we'll have legitimate semi-pro sports.
Now, here on the Hard to Breathe podcast, we like to get personal. And looking at your story and your background, obviously sports plays a huge role in your life. And it seems like that was true from day one. As a kid growing up in Flatbush, Brooklyn, New York, poor kid, saving up money to go see the New York Yankees whenever you could, get the cheapest seat you could. What was it about sports or baseball in particular, or the Yankees in particular, that was so inspiring and motivating for you that led to this career?
It made great conversation. I can get my arms around it. I wasn't a reader. I had learning disability growing up, so watching games was something that I could absorb. Still to this day, I struggle reading, struggle writing, written 4 books, 2,500 blogs, but still pretty much illiterate. If you've ever got emails from me, texts, you're like, who is this guy? He's like 3rd grader. And it's now become like a point of that's kind of my distinction. And it's when you get something from me, it from me, you're like, this guy is really bright, but he seems to be an idiot. And it kind of makes you laugh. I texted Aaron Boone last week and he said, your texts are like a 3rd grade. I said, yeah, but it does get your attention, doesn't it?
It's a style.
And who's texting you at 6 o'clock in the morning worrying about what you're doing and how we're making some money? So be grateful. So, I don't know, the sports thing was an outlet for me. I was never really a great athlete. I'm not one of these guys, I hurt my knee or my arm rotator cuff. I generally, rounded up the middle of the pack, hope that I got chosen in most games in the local schoolyard. But I'll be honest with you, sports was an outlet. I enjoyed it. I had to really play hard just to be included. But the business wasn't. I was much more attracted to the entrepreneurism, trying to find different ways to do shit than I was as far as, sports. Like, business was my outlet. Business was huge because I needed the money. I woke up broke every day and I didn't like it. And I definitely was destined to do something about it. I tell people, regardless of how much money you have, wake up broke. You want to motivate yourself? Like, nobody needs to slap you across your head. Just wake up broke and make believe you don't have all the things you actually need. It's a good motivator. But remember, your circumstances are broke. Doesn't mean you're broke. And that's what my mother said to my mom. Like, we're really poor. No, our circumstances are really poor. You're not poor. You're a rich soul. You have in you everything that anyone else has. But our circumstances right now pretty much suck. Having to go to a food bank and get food and that kind of thing, and wearing hand-me-down clothes. I mean, it's not great. But you can get through that stuff with the right mindset. And I think my mom helped me quite a bit with that mindset. And I think anybody in any position that anyone that's listening, I mean, an enthusiastic and curious mindset will lead you to a lot of places. You can kind of underline that with a dream big, dream big, stay curious, be enthusiastic. Curious, you have to be learning. You have to be, I tell players I work with all the time, like, you got to be, who are you asking for help? Who's looking at what you're doing? Who's trying to get you to become a better player? And are you curious? Just keep doing the same old thing, but you got to stay curious about the game or about the business you're playing. Enthusiasm, the root word of enthusiasm is enthusios. And that means to be with God. So you have to have faith. And this is a very difficult thing because I'm asking you to see something or look at something you can't see. That's faith. And faith is believing in something you can't see. So, obviously I had no idea what I was going to become, how this was going to work out, but I was enthusiastic about it. I was curious about it. The fact that I had trouble reading and writing ended up being a benefit because it really pushed me to go to different sources to get information and to ask questions to different people. I just couldn't just pick up a book as easily as that. So, and I've maintained that. I'm 65 now, and I'm as curious and as enthusiastic as I've ever been. But I think it's important. If you want to see how you're kind of doing, look at your rate of growth. Look at your rate of growth and look at your rate of enthusiasm, and you'll know if you're in the right direction. And if those things are really low, you're probably miserable. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care. If you have a low rate of growth and your enthusiasm isn't that great about what you're doing, about what you're about to do, you're probably miserable.
So when you say rate of growth, are you talking about personal growth or are you talking about your business growing?
Everything. I mean, why would you categorize it? I mean, rate of growth is rate of growth. And I think your rate of growth personally, your rate of growth with your marriage, your rate of growth in parenting, your rate of growth with health, those are all critical and all part of the deal. Those are all the ingredients that make up the soup. If you want to have a great soup, we all know it's all different things you can put in there to make that stock. And you're the stock. And if you're not growing, learning how to sleep better, eat better, those are all important. They pay a lot. They're a lot more important as different phases in your life. But you should try to get prepared for all that before you know you have kids, this and that, and your rate of growth with sleeping and eating right. You're going to need more energy. You got more people pressing on you, and those things will come in handy. And that's why a lot of people fall apart. Oh, you have 2 young kids. Oh, yeah, I'm falling apart. Well, that's because you didn't prepare for that. But if you're physically ready, spiritually ready, it's amazing what you could do. And you don't even have to be that smart. And I'm just not that smart. When you read any of my books, the first thing that people say is like, I really like your book, but you're really not that smart. Like, there's not anything in here that's like, oh God.
That's the first thing people say? What a compliment.
A lot of people come to me, a lot of young people say, this book, everything in this book I could do. This is nothing earth-shattering. I'm like, yeah, exactly. It is nothing earth-shattering, exactly. But you got to put yourself in a position. And sometimes that will be inconvenient. Sometimes that will not be what you exactly want to do on that particular day. And I would say, commitment is not convenient. It's not. Matter of fact, most of the great things you're going to accomplish will have a whole series of inconveniences. But, listen, I haven't had to work a day. People say I've never worked a day in my life, but blah, blah, blah. That's bullshit. But I've worked some really, really messed up jobs, like where, I've worked a bunch of days. I've been in warehouses. I've washed dishes. There was nothing that great and pleasant about it. But I think that since I'm 41, I've been financially secured where I've not had to work to make money. And I think that's the great gift is like when money, the only purpose money has is to not worry about money. And then you can start really running your business, which I feel like I did for most of the way, based on people and principles, not based on ego and money. And I think that what the dilemma you have now in today's, and I'm so grateful, like I'm basing everything I do on people, principles, doing the right thing, doing great work, and I let the money take care of itself. Now, a little easier for me when you're financially independent, but the earlier you can do that in your career, where you're doing the stuff that you know is right, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. Like you're doing stuff because it's right. You're taking care of the people around you, whether it's the gardener, the guy who brings you your breakfast, whatever it is. You're just putting out as much good as you can. People and principles, rate yourself 1 to 10. How much do you really care about principles, the way you interact with people, and how you take care of your customers? And then rate your level of importance on money and ego, and why you do some of the things you do based on your ego and based on the money grab. And if those numbers are all close, or God forbid if the money and ego is even higher than the people and principles, let me tell you what's going to happen. You may make some money. You will be miserable, and you will end up with a pretty decent empty life. And I wish more of this conversation would happen when to kids in high school and in middle school, to understand what winning the game really is.
Well, what is winning the game to you?
I think it's simple. I mean, first of all, I think life is a game. It's scoring points. It's about, first of all, doing as much good as you can for as many people as you can, and about growth. I always say happiness resides on a cross-section of growth and gratitude. Figure out how you can grow every day. Figure out how you can be grateful for where you're at right now. Not worrying about what happened in the past and not totally concerned about your future, but being present, being like right now is great. Right now is the best it can be right now. Great. This interview is the best. I love it. It's great. I'm here right now. Like, it's hard to always do that, but you have to have some moments in your day where this is going to get incorporated. And I think winning is, having a partner that you can basically shadow your life with. I have a wife of 37 years, but, it's amazing if you can manage to meet and put the effort in to have somebody shadow your life with you so that you know that when it's all over, that somebody else has seen everything you've been through, good, bad, and ugly, and you've seen what they've been through, and you could share that together. There's some ups and downs with all that, but that's pretty amazing as opposed to going through that alone. Knowing you've raised some people that are going onto the planet to maybe do some more good than you did, right? You raised them the right way, so now they're going onto the planet to do good, not only just fill their pockets and maybe be an asset to society. If you've done that, whatever they decide to do, police officer, teacher, entrepreneur, businessman. But it should be a concern of yours, like how did you raise your kids? And are you putting some people that handle their stuff well so that they're an asset as opposed to a liability? People don't talk about that. Like, I judge someone's success. Like, man, look at those two rugrats you have that, they're cutting out of school, causing problems, breaking into people's houses. Like, that's winning. I think that, it's just doing as much good as you can, really.
And to continue that sport metaphor that you're talking about in growth and excitement, exuberance, I think those are the athletes that we as fans really kind of connect with and root for. The guys who maybe it didn't come as easy, the guys who have to be grinders, the guys who have to struggle to kind of find their role on a team, but when they do, they stand out because they, you can tell that they weren't the most gifted athletes, but it's those guys, like you say, that strive each day to get a little bit better, that they know it didn't come easy for them.
I mean, how many guys you see at the ballpark, like, walking by fans? What does it take to sign autographs for 10 minutes?
Exactly.
You're never going to get them all, but 10 minutes is better than 0 minutes. Without those people, you wouldn't be getting what you get. I mean, why wouldn't you build up your fan base every day? And I tell people all the time, how many people are you walking by? Maybe you're not signing autographs for them, but how many people are you walking by without showing gratitude or a connection or maybe something nice you could do for them? That's kind of how you build up a brand. Yes, it's important to come up with a good product. Yes. And it's important that it's consistent. But the bottom line is if you don't do more than just deliver a good product and service on time, consistently, you'll eventually lose that customer. If you're not leading them with love, doing more than what's expected, That's building a brand. It's stopping for 10 minutes and signing the autographs. It's putting a note in one of the shipments, the boxes. It's calling somebody up about some service you're providing, offering some additional services that the person's not even paying for. But you know something that they need to know, and you want to help them. Those are the people you don't leave. I don't lose customers. I don't want to lose a customer. And in order to stop that, my life is a three-way street. There's what I do for you, you do for me, and then the other third lane is all the extra stuff I'm going to do for you, to love you, take care of you, worry about you, all the stuff that goes below the line, so that when stuff comes up and somebody says, I can do what Brandon does. Not so fast, my friend. That guy, nah. I'm never leaving that guy. And I think people don't think enough about that. Like, that's brand building. Getting people to become fans of yours and doing the extra stuff. I think it's just really important. Just on a life lesson note, it's like, life is a game. I don't know if the audience is male or female, but, marriage is a game. And the objective is to really get as close to your wife, have a great relationship, and you got to score points. Like, don't, every time you do something nice for your wife, honey, love your shoes. Love that you did something with your hair. Oh, beautiful. Oh, honey, thanks for picking up the kids. I know. Yeah, thank you. Don't buy your wife a dozen roses. Buy her one rose 12 times. That's 12 points. Come home, nice. Rub her neck. Try to find one nice thing to say about every person. When you have a relationship, let's say with 5 or 6 people you deal with every day, always try to find and start that relationship off with something nice to say to them. But you think about how many times you come home, you see your wife, it's a complaint or it's something negative. Or my first thing now when I see my wife is to try to figure out something nice to say to her and compliment her on something. I'm not saying everything's positive, but you got to lead with that kind of love and kindness, and it's a great way to score points and keep your marriage alive and earn your keep. It's like, who the hell wants to be around somebody who's always bitching and complaining and never has anything nice to say? I'm just kind of dramatizing a little bit, but it's true.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of how I look at all my relationships. I'm just looking at them all constantly. As I'm getting older, there's a lot of them, and I'm spending the time to manage them, whether it be getting on an airplane and not watching some stupid movie, but getting on the airplane and going through all my contacts and touching base with people, sending them notes, sending them gifts. It's work, but that's those are the people that make my life great and help make my life roll.
I'm already seeing the title of this episode, The Gamification of Life. Trying to find the game.
I just came off the road. I was on the road last week, which is unusual. I was on the road for 4 or 5 days. I was on the road for 3 or 4 days. The first thing I do in my office, my first day since Thursday that I'm back in the office, is thanking all the people that made what just happened over the last 4 days possible. Following up with every person I met, sending them a gift, sending them something that was a connection to my mind that I thought they'd like, a book, a gift, something. Otherwise, what just happened? I just met a bunch of people, and maybe I'll see them, maybe I won't. Like, if I see somebody that I think's a cool person I like, I have to have an indication and lead them to say, hey, I like you, and I want to continue this relationship. I'd like to initiate it. And that's getting a handwritten note, maybe a book, maybe some gift or something. And I think a lot of times people are so busy trying to find the next connection, if we're talking about growing your business, get to know the people you already know better and follow up with them and get deeper in it. There's probably a lot more there with most of your connections than you think. That's how I look at it.
I love your emphasis on relationships, both personal and business. We talk a lot about mental health and wellness on this show. And I think when we talk about that, a lot of times the first place people go is how you're taking care of your body, how you're taking care of your mind, your emotional state. But like the last thing that people get to is relational health. The importance of the people and the way that you communicate with people in your life and foster those relationships. And it's interesting to hear your perspective on how it's equally important to invest yourself in your business relationships, the people that you come back to in that world, as much as it is the people in your personal life, your family, and how much that matters. I'm curious to hear your perspective on a topic that we have talked to about with other very highly successful business people. And it's a more controversial topic than I would have thought. And that is work-life balance. For a lot of people, it's like, well, it's got to be 50-50, or it's people that are in the corporate world say, well, there's no way you can do that. You have to work 18-hour days. You have to be available. And then everything has to come second if you want to succeed. And I'm curious, do you have a definition of what that is? Is that something that is important to you, or is it just kind of play it by ear?
No, it's huge. Matter of fact, in my last book, Living on Purpose, it's the main focus of that book. Work-life balance is bullshit. I hate that expression. I don't even know what that means, but I mean, a lot of it's just based on really what you want to have happen. And yeah, there are some gives here, and there's some compromises, but I think it's work life. It's respect life, work. I think you have to respect the pillars. I think when people get confused because they think they got to work 18 hours, and maybe you do. I just did. You know what I mean? But you also have to respect the nutrition, the health, getting home to see your kids. So if you're not respecting that at all, you're going to end up in an empty house, and just basically giving your wife half. I think the work-life balance. If you want to do something extraordinary, it's going to take. There can't be a shot clock in your office. You can't. I mean, because there are going to be periods of times, and how you handle what's probably the most important asset in your life, which is time, is the key. Not. I mean, there's no shot clock in my office. I'm not keeping score. Oh, I worked 8. No, I don't know about that. But what I know is that I've got to make sure that I've got to earn my keep with my wife. I know I've got to get to the doctors. I know I've got to take care of my health. I know I've got to work out every morning. I do work out every morning, 6 or 7 days a week. Just getting over a shoulder operation, so I've gained a little weight, but I'm still down in the gym doing cardio every day. More for my mental health. I know I need that. I'm never going to compromise that. I'm never going to compromise when my kids say, Dad, I need to, I want to do this. No, I'm never compromising that. But I don't need to just do whatever it is just so I get the 50-50 balance. Because I'll be miserable, and I know I've left opportunities on the floor, and I don't want to do that either. I think there are times when you have to go several months and maybe you're not coming up for air. But if you're doing that for several years, then you're putting yourself in a compromising position. So I would say common sense has to be common practice. And you need to be navigating this question on a month-to-month basis instead of making a life choice. I've made, you know what I mean? Like, you can't make a life choice. Well, I'm just going to, well, actually, you can. I mean, you can. There are jobs that will give you 40 hours, 45 hours. If you're okay with that lifestyle and making that amount of money and realizing what's going to come and not come with it, I'm okay with it. I don't think everybody should go for it. That wasn't me. That was never going to be me. Listen, my son came to me and says, Dad, I want to get paid the most amount of money, work the least amount. I got stuff I want to do, and it's not all work. I respect that. My kid's a really bright kid. He put a lot of time into school. He's an industrial engineer. He makes a lot of money. He's not going for the corner office. But when he's working, he's working. Sometimes it goes a little bit over, but he's definitely not looking to go and run the whole show. That's not of interest to him. Me, anything I was doing, I'm running it. I'm taking over that hotel. I'm taking over that restaurant, whatever it was. I always have that kind of leadership mindset, but that's not for everybody. But what scares me is like when people know they've got shit to do, the fortune really is in the follow-up. So you got to be organized, your time management. If you got stuff to do, then you got to do it, even if it's inconvenient. You can't go home. I just didn't have time. The buzzer went off. There's no buzzer. Like, if I promise certain things, like right now, I'm thinking, I've been out for 4 days, and I've got X amount of things to do. It's going to be very tricky right now for me to get everything done today that I want to do. And part of my day will be doing as much as I can, and part of my day will be sending emails to people apologizing that I'm not going to be able to get to them, and I'm going to get to them tomorrow. It's the laissez-faire, like, I'm just doing the best I can. No, I do everything you can. And there are days, and there are some things that are on my plate right now that may cause me to call my wife and say, I'm just not coming home for dinner. But again, I've earned a right doing what I'm doing, as good as at what I'm doing. I'm pretty good at it, that I can go do a couple punts here and there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I can intentionally walk a couple of situations and say, hey, this is going to have to be a tomorrow thing. I'm sorry I didn't get to you. But when I don't hear from somebody and they're supposed to get back to me, that is your road to, matter of fact, you're not only going in the wrong direction, you're sprinting in the wrong direction enthusiastically. You're never getting to any place great not doing what you're supposed to do and what you've given your word to do.
Well, knowing all that, we appreciate you taking a little time out of that very busy day to speak to us today even more. Cause
I just try to keep it real. I mean, and I just want to say, I got this pod today and everything's great. Like, no, I'm messed up today. I'm going to work out of it, but I had an eye doctor appointment. I had to go physical therapy for my shoulder. I'm not going to ignore a damn shoulder. I mean, I'm 4 months into this damn shoulder. I can't wait for this thing to get going again. Yeah. So I'm taking care of the funnels, and I'm balancing them like everybody else. I'm just balancing everything out, trying the best I can, And that's if they're getting home after I was in Savannah yesterday, flying home last night. I was in Cleveland the week, 3 days before that. So, it's like you're balancing everything. And then here I am, I haven't been home. Probably need to get home in a reasonable hour tonight. I haven't seen my wife in 4 days. So, we're all balancing. I think it's the number one challenge right now that's on people's plate when I go and speak around the country is not the work. It's how do I get everything done? How do I get the most amount of stuff done in the least amount of time? How do I become more efficient? And I just want to answer that question really simply. Focus. If you have more than 2 priorities in the day, you have no priorities, just go get drunk or smoke weed, whatever you do. But, 2 priorities, you got to have the WMI, what's most important, and you have to have that in front of you. Work out, get some form of cardio in almost every day so you have some clarity, and your energy will dictate a lot about how much you get done. Starting off your day with some cardio and eating well will enable you to get a lot more done than you ever thought you could do. And then come to the realization at some point where there's some things that are burning you that you may need help with. Because there's nothing worse than waking up in the morning, which I did today, realizing there's no way I'm getting everything, and then going to bed tonight, realize I didn't get to everything, I let some people down. That's not a good feeling. You feel like shit. You feel like a little bit of a failure. The problem is that's just going to be one day out of many that will happen. I'm usually really organized. But if you're living that life, and that's your story most nights, then you're going to be miserable. You're probably going to quit your job anyway. So time management is huge. Your first 90 seconds of the day is the most important 90 seconds, more important than the other 23 hours, 58 minutes and 30 seconds. It's critical. And what you do in those first 90 seconds with your most MVP list, your most valuable priorities, making sure you don't have more than 2, with maybe a third as a runner-up, and also realizing who's important and making sure you have a list so that the people that need you the most are also the people that are most important to you get some attention. Usually in a business, you got the shitty customer, the person who hasn't paid. You got the employee that, God knows, dragging his feet, and now you got to go help them. Those are the people that are killing you, and that's why creating that list in the morning with your MVP list, creating the priorities right when you wake up before you even go to the bathroom, and your not-to-do list is just as important. Most people have a to-do list. I got a not-to-do list. I know the people I'm staying away from, I don't want any part of. I know my certain customers, I just don't want to get in their mindset because it's always going to take me down and they're going to drag me in. And instead of being 15 minutes, it's going to be 3 hours. And that's how your days get lost. So focus on who's important, know what's important for who's important, and do it. Have your priorities set up in the morning, right out of the gate before you even wake up, and make sure you get some form of workout, a walk, a quick bike ride, getting on a bike, getting on your treadmill, get 45 minutes of rigorous exercise in to take care of some of the anxiety issues, and eat something solid and healthy in the morning. You'd be surprised how things could change, how much more you can get done. I'm sorry, I'm ranting. I'm taking over your whole pod here.
No, that's an interesting description, and it actually, I have one more question on the topic of people and relationships relating to what you just said. It strikes me, you're obviously an ambitious person. You are entrepreneurial. You've moved through the sports world in a lot of different areas. And I get the sense that you're a big sports fan, and that's why you chose that industry. But is there something about athletes in particular as to why you picked working with those people? Because athletes in particular, some of them have big egos and have their heads in the wrong place in terms of what you just described. But they all have some element of having to be very focused. Obviously, their body and staying at the top of their game, literally, in terms of performance, is the utmost in terms of their lifestyle. So is there something about athletes that inspires you, or is there something about being around those people that is meaningful to you, or is it does it cut both ways?
I mean, I think for a while it was meaningful. I don't think it's as meaningful anymore for me. I think, I got in the game because I saw an open window that improvement was needed. I thought there was back 35, 40 years ago, I saw a window where I saw a lot of athletes and talent because of some of my circumstances. People were coming to me, and I saw a window to make money. It was a freaking money grab. I mean, it wasn't because I love sports. I saw a business that was was totally immature, totally needed navigation, and totally needed, I don't know, it was probably a zillion ideas I was thinking of back in the late 80s of what I want to get into. And I thought it'd be a good way to make a living. I had nothing to do with, oh, I love sports. Let me do this. And
sorry, I just wanted to clarify for the audience. Are we talking about the memorabilia, or are we talking more about representing athletes in
I'm talking about the memorabilia. Just remember, when I first started the business, and I still do this today, I market a ton of athletes, and I have a ton of accounts that I just get talent for, nothing to do with memorabilia. But I think it's bullshit. Like, oh, I love sports, so let me get in the sports business. Like, really? I love business, and I saw the sports business at a really infantile state, and I saw an opportunity to do something really good. And the same thing happened in the mid-'90s with the memorabilia. It wasn't out of love. I was trying to buy a car. I was doing everything I could to get a car. I was not making a lot of money. And I saw a window maybe to do a memorabilia project or two that would make me a lot of money. It came upon me. I was sitting on the train. Boom. And don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't love the business. I do. I wouldn't be as deep into it, and I wouldn't have had the success. But I didn't know it at the time. My initial thought was, this is a money grab. There's an opportunity to make some money. I saw an opportunity to make money with athletes at an early age. I saw there was an indication that people needed help doing deals with athletes. It's a lot easier now to do a deal with an athlete, but back in the late 80s, early 90s, if you didn't have an athlete's home phone number, there was no internet, there was no cell phones. I mean, you had to have his or her home number, and you had to have, making that connection was huge. I'd have 3 big rolodexes of all the hundreds of names. Why? Because I was outside in the freaking parking lot like a dog, waiting for these players to come out, home team, visitors team, and trying to get numbers, and constantly trying to come up with ideas of marketing and stuff that they could do. In those days, not a lot of people were doing that. Not a lot of business opportunities like there is now. Now I see, marketing, it's like, I mean, there's an art to really finding a really good talent to match up with a company. And now a lot of it's based on likes and social media presence and kind of hype as opposed to the quality of the person. Which really holds back in some sense the celebrity marketing stuff. So like, I tell people out there, it's okay to be a money grabber, but you don't want to be a money grabber for a long period of time. You don't want to be a stripper, right? I mean, like, you may have to strip, you may strip a little bit to make a little extra money, but all of a sudden you're stripping when you're 35 years old. I mean, this is not a good direction.
Be nice to have that kind of job security.
But that's the point. What happens is, you figure you're good looking, you can maybe do a little stripping, you make a little money on the side, and you're making some money. Then you start creating a lifestyle based on that money you make, right? And before you know it, now you're 25, 30, you got a really expensive apartment, you got some expensive habits, and you need that stripper money to do it. Now you're 35 and you can't strip anymore. Nobody wants you dancing around naked in front of them. And now you're trying to find another career, and now you got to start over again. It's like, and by the way, I'm using that as a metaphor, but we all know a lot of people that take the job in the bank, the insurance, the bullshit, boring ass jobs, at least for some, and they do it because it supports their lifestyle as opposed to supporting their purpose and their passion. And that's where you got to be careful. You could do something for a short period of time, but you just need the damn money. Well, you see the money grab. But if all of a sudden you're gobbling up 5, 6, 7 years of your life, that's the stripper life. Don't be a stripper. That could be the title of this pod too.
Heard that one too, yeah. The subtitle.
Don't get me started.
So I'm a little confused. So you talk about passion and purpose and how you have to invest yourself in something that is meaningful to you. And then you just said that sports, which is the industry that you chose, it wasn't the love of sports that was the driving force for you. So is it the game? Is it the business? The conquering? Yeah, that's what it is.
It was the business. And what I loved about the sports thing is that it was a highway with no red lights, no speed limits, nothing. It was like, hey, guess what? I got an idea. I think you should take this athlete and let him promote your orange juice. Why do you think that? Well, because he drinks a quart of orange juice every day. And when I went to his house, I opened up the refrigerator, and all he had was orange juice. He should be a spokesman for you. Really? Good idea. How about we bring him to your trade show and maybe do a little PR around the fact of why he loves orange juice? I think it'd be good for your brand. Good idea. Hey, Joe, I called up the orange juice company, and they love the fact that maybe you drink orange juice every day, and maybe you can go promote the orange juice. Well, I love orange juice. Can the deal include a lifetime worth of orange juice? Absolutely. That's why I did it. First, I called them just to get you the free orange juice. Now they're getting your money and the orange juice, and you're promoting something you truly enjoy and like. I love that business, that collaboration. Thank you. By the way, I got you $100,000 minus my $15,000. You'll be getting $85,000, and I charge the company $100,000. And this is what the stuff you have to do. I like that. I mean, that's now the fact of the matter is I found the market and I found a group, an industry that I could jump into and fit in without having to climb over a million hurdles. Like if you're a young kid now, there's a lot of hurdles. A lot of people doing that. But I've got a 40-year advantage and a heads up. with a lot of relationships with a lot of players. So when I called them up, I may not have to even explain all that much. I'm like, listen, I got this orange juice company. Here's where you need to be, and I'll send you the check for $85,000. Any other questions? Or just be there on Monday at 8 o'clock. And that's the advantage I have now, and why clients still use me. But it's not that I'm not passionate about the sports, but these guys it's very tricky. And all celebrities are. And I'm actually moving a little bit away from it because, they're making so much money. It's getting really, really harder and harder. Hence why my collectible exchange is like a marketplace. And I'm kind of sticking with a certain amount of clients that are going to appreciate my services. And I'm more into the business and helping those businesses grow than really into, what can I go and do for this one particular player? I like business. I like growing businesses and helping companies build businesses. And if I can add my element of sports knowledge and marketing to it, that's exciting. And that's my purpose. And that's my passion.
Now, you mentioned before we pressed record on this, something I want to tee up for you.
I'm trying to remember, was that like a week ago?
Yeah. Have you had any particular relationships or people in this world of business that have inspired you or have been particularly meaningful moments or relationships with the people that you've been lucky enough to come across?
I mean, how much time do we have? Like, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't have a relationship with anybody that wasn't inspiring, that wasn't meaningful, which I consider all the people I have relationships with to be. From Walter Payton to Derek Jeter to Mariano Rivera to some of the great CEOs that I've been able to get inside their space. People, how'd you ever get me to go and see President Clinton trying to get him to do a deal. There's no one that I'm not afraid to go and talk with to see if I can get a deal done. And I think when you look at people, that what turns me on, to answer your question, what's exciting, what's motivating is people that are really great at what they do. And I don't get that judgmental about it. Like, if somebody's great at editing and recording and doing videos, I get off on that. I want to connect. I want to learn. If somebody's a great baseball player, great. I want to know how they became great. The fact that they're a great baseball player and everybody's going crazy for them, I'm trying to get the secrets to the sauce. I'm trying to figure what happened to them as a kid. Yes, there's talent with sports. That's what makes it a little confusing. There are a lot of players that have talent, but there are a lot more players that have more talent than the ones that are in these leagues that don't make it. And I want to know why they made it. There are a lot of people a lot smarter than me that try to get into this business that I'm in that didn't make it. Why? And it wasn't the physicality. It wasn't the natural talent. It wasn't what they were born with. It was the mental mindset. It was something that happened that said, I'm not willing to pay the price. This is just not going to work out, whatever it is. So I've been a great student of this, and I've written a lot about this stuff in a lot of my books and the stuff that I post on my social, because I think it's worth sharing. Not the RBIs, the number of touchdowns, but let me tell you this story that player X told me that really made sense. So when you're in a pickle or you're up against the wall, this is the magic, or this is the logic they use to get themselves over the goal line.
Well, let me ask you a follow up on that, because you do say that you work with all these different athletes, but there is certainly an upper echelon of guys who, men and women, who go aren't just successful. I mean, they are the best of the best. And show my homerism here. You talk about Mariano, you talk about Derek, guys who don't just succeed, but they rise to the occasion and become transcendent. And people talk about certain athletes, certain personalities, presidents, when they walk into a room, you just feel the energy change. Yeah. Can you is there anything that ties all those athletes together, that there's a certain skill that they possess, or something that allows them to not just be, hey, they won a World Series, but they won 4 World Series, or they won 7 Super Bowl rings, things like that? Is there one unifying personality trait that all these athletes tend to share that you go, this guy's got it?
The common denominator is an insatiable appetite to compete and never really be settling for just some winning. When I see people celebrating over a win, that's immediately I'm thinking loser. Lose. Let's go celebrate. Like, celebrate over what? Like, you're hot. And the great ones, always after they win, all they want to do is go back to work because they want to get that feeling again. I think that there's always a little bit of a difference of how somebody gets to extraordinary and greatness. So, like with Jeter, it was preparation. He didn't want to ever go in a situation unprepared. So I was asking, like, he goes, after every pitch, every batter, there's a million things going on instead of all the possibilities. So people are like, how do you make that play in the dive? Or how do you make that play with the flip, in the Oakland A's? And you make those kind of plays.
Giambi should have slid.
No question. But he hadn't thought about it. If the ball got a single, what he was going to do, and his lack of speed, and what he had to do to go all out. He was not completely prepared. You can make that argument, maybe. God rest his soul. I don't want to get too into it with him, but loved his brother. But I look at Derek like another one of those, like, I think he's an extraordinary athlete, but more extraordinary in his preparation and thinking about every possibility every time somebody came up the plate, given who's pitching, the speed, who's on the bases. So that's a lot. Like every time I walk into a business situation, I'm not only thinking about what I'm presenting, but I'm thinking about everything that's going on in the room. I'm trying to figure out where every one of those people that are in this meeting are coming from, maybe what they've gone through this morning or recently. I'm thinking about where that company has gone, where it's been, where it's going, the whole vibe in the office. I'm trying to pick up, there's 18 zillion things going on that gives me the gut feeling of how I want to present at that moment to this group to match up to maybe the energy and the jive that's going on in that company. What's great about Derek is he's actually thinking about speed, the whole overall situation. Is the pitcher inside, outside? Is he accurate? And what's going to happen if it gets thrown to me, the third baseman, if the ball gets thrown there? What happens if the ball gets hit to left field, right field? He's thinking about all these situations, which is insane. Now, Mariano was somebody about his consistency. When you think about the greatness of Mariano was his consistency. When he came in the mound, you knew you were getting. And he went with the Apple style. Like, Apple could be producing all kinds of different products, but they make one freaking thing. That's it. Right? Rolex makes one thing, a watch. And his thing was the cutter. I go, Mo, throw a changeup, throw a curve. Why? All I'm doing is making my best better. I tell people all the time, if you have one great thing you're doing, don't settle. Make your best better. So I'm in spring training. I go sit down. I'm watching the game. I go up and get a pretzel. I come back. Sitting next to me is Mariano. I go, whoa, what are you doing here? I thought we were doing something after the game. He's like, we were. I asked Joe Torre, to pitch early so I can go leave early with you and go do the thing we're doing. I go, it's a spring training game. And he goes, whoa. You didn't see me. I said, well, I went to get a pretzel. That was 1, 2, 3, 8 pitches. I said, but it's a spring training game again. He goes, Brandon, when I go on the mound, I never deviate. I pitch in March in spring training like I do it's Game 7 World Series. Like I do it's the 9th inning, 2 outs. This way, when I get in those situations, I never have to alter. I don't change anything. People say, how do you deal with these big games? I don't. I'm doing exactly the same thing, the same level of focus, the same level of energy. But when you look at Mariano, the consistency, when I hear people say, I've got a big meeting, I've got a big interview, I've got a big sale, like what does that mean about all the other stuff you're doing? Like, I treat this interview as the most important and most biggest interview I've ever done. I don't deviate. So as the interviews come, I'm totally prepared, and I'm 100% in, whether I was talking to some high school kid who's doing a pod or whether I'm talking to 60 Minutes or whatever. I don't have to deviate. I don't know, I got this big, no. I got this big sale. How about the other sales? No. And I think that kind of consistency is something we can all learn from. And the last guy, since we're talking core 4, is Andy Petite. The self-talk. He had this little, he always made believe he had this little fictitious character on his shoulder that would talk to him. You got this. Come on, Andy. That. And I think self-talk is huge. What you're saying to yourself, especially after you've struck out or you've walked the batter or you haven't had a good at-bat. I think self-talk is critical. What you're saying to yourself, what's going on in your mind. You have 60,000 thoughts in a day, and the tendency is the majority of them are negative. And you've got to be careful when you're doing important stuff of what you're telling yourself and how you're building yourself up, and when things are not quite going well, what you're actually saying. Because that dictates a lot of times the result. So the self-talk, and a lot of people that are hopefully listening, think about what you're saying, your best, what's the best thing that can happen to you, and what's the self-talk? Are you on the highway with no red lights? Or are there stop signs and speed bumps and all kinds of potholes? Like, what's your story? What's your road look like? Because a lot of it is self-talk and mental mindset. Like, my freaking highway right now, there are no speed limits, no stop signs. Boom. And if you think about it, that's kind of where most of us really are. But that's not really where most of us are.
So what's your self-talk look like when you're having a day like today, when you have more stuff to do than you can do, and you're dealing with that feeling of not knowing if you can get it all done and whether you're going to go to sleep not having done it. What do you say to yourself? How do you stay on track? How do you get through those times?
Well, first of all, Brandon, you got this. The anxiety, even though I was busy this morning, I made sure I got my hour of cardio in this morning. So I'm not completely out of my mind. I'm not down the rabbit hole where I'm anxiety, I'm all crazy. I always say take action over anxiety. So my action right away was get up, even though I was a little tired after flying all day and working yesterday. Go get your workout in, get your head straight. And at the same time, before I get on that treadmill, I'm making a list of the most important things. So as soon as I get going, I have that list of what's most important. I'm going to do the best I can. That's what I'm going to say to myself. Brandon, you got this. Do the best you can. Do everything you can. And when you get to a certain stop part where you may have to stop, give people that you promise things the respect by giving them a quick call and a message, and you'll get on it tomorrow because tomorrow's going to be a better day. Although if I told you what I was doing tomorrow, which is why I'm really pressed today, there is no tomorrow, so it's going to have to be Thursday. So that's the problem. But I'm so excited about tomorrow that I'm going to do everything I can to get everything done. And it may even take me going home for dinner, having dinner with my wife, sitting there and watching TV, and as she falls asleep, I may actually just pop out of bed and knock out those 4 or 5 things I haven't done, because tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. I got to be at work. So I know that I'm not going to get to whatever I'm not doing today so quickly. So I more than likely, I'll either get up at 3 a.m. and get everything done, or when my wife falls asleep, I'll probably get out of bed and maybe just crank out what I need to do.
I know that you're pressed for time, and I want to be respectful of that, but I have one more question for you. Something that you asked a little earlier, or you stated a little earlier. You were talking about the people that you meet. I asked you about athletes and people in relationships, and you said that you want to know what makes this person tick, like why they became this way. How did they become so good at what they do? How did they get that mindset? What happened to them when they were young? You've mentioned coming from a poor background. You've talked about an underdog mindset. You obviously have this drive and this ability to continue to adapt to the shifting landscape and move forward. What was it in your past? What was it in your childhood or early years that allowed you to have this sort of adaptive mindset, this ability to work through and overcome the challenges that come with what you do?
I think it's common sense. I mean, I think, what everything I've done in business has been based on a few things. As I mentioned, curiosity, enthusiasm, but also common sense. My ability to get out of my own freaking head, which nobody cares about what I'm thinking and feeling. Like, common sense is really empathy. It's about putting yourself in a common person's shoes, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So even starting my day out, putting myself in my wife's shoes. Honey, it looks like you got a lot on your plate. Is something I can grab, something I could do. Instead of, I got so much to do. Even there are days when I got a lot to do, but I see she's struggling. Honey, is there something I could do to take off your plate? What can I do to help you? And I think a big part of what I've been doing since I'm 10 years old is putting myself in other people's shoes and thinking about what it's like for them. I think if you really want to be a great entrepreneur, you have to lead with curiosity and empathy. Empathy and compassion, which is get out of your freaking head. If you want to fill yourself, forget yourself and get into other people's heads, especially the people that are most important. Think about what they're thinking about, feel what they're feeling, see what they're seeing, and then you'll see the white space. Even with your kids, figuring out what's winning for your kids, it's hard. Let's say you're 45 or 50 years old, you got a 15-year-old kid. Think about what it's like to be that 15-year-old kid. Even if he's living in your house, maybe you got a nice house. That doesn't mean it's easy for him or her. Think about what it's like to go to school, the bullying, the social media, the pressure. Now starting to think about college. Put yourself in their shoes, and only then can you figure out how you can help them. And that's my key. The way I did a deal with the Yankees is I put myself in their shoes. I'm thinking about what they're going through. They have to sell in, maybe doing a deal with a Brandon Steiner. I'm trying to think what the value proposition for a Yankee fan is if all of a sudden the Yankees start selling collectibles. And I pressed that value proposition for the 15 years I was with them. I pressed that value proposition with Jeter for the 20 years I was with him, which was his foundation, helping people, help his foundation grow, helping as many kids. His goal in life wasn't to sign, the 250,000 autographs he did for me. So everybody has their hot buttons. And I think the most important thing is trying to figure out what the other person that you're dealing with needs and wants and get out of your head and try to figure out what's good for them. And a lot of times that will lead you to enhancing your relationship or finding some white space in the business you haven't even thought of, one of my big things is trying to find early indications and trying to find something that maybe seems like it's going to work. So I tell people, it's like, if you're looking for a score and you want to become a multi-gazillionaire right away, like, buy lottery tickets, man, or find a really rich relative and hope they die. But at the end of the day, like, what you really want to do is, if you really want to grow your business, is look for early indications of the things that you could do well, or the things you're doing in business that are working well, and create a reasonable expectation that those things actually work, and put your mindset of just figuring out how to make them better and how to grow them, instead of thinking, oh, I've got this big score. I go home every day, like, I think I got a really cool thing going on with this new company, Collectible Exchange. But I'm just trying. I'm not a techie. I don't know anything. I'm just trying to help some people sell their collections. 100,000, 125,000 things on the website later, 1 million trading cards on the other site. I'm just trying. Because I have an early indication that people have a lot of stuff, they don't know what to do with it. So I'm helping them put the stuff up on the site. I'm helping them sell it. I had an early indication that athletes need some help with their marketing. Why? Because a bunch of athletes were calling me saying, can you help me? Can you find? So I surveyed them, found stuff that they were interested in, found products that they were connected to, and started calling the companies up and see if I could make the match. And an early indication when I called those companies and said, hey, I got a guy who drinks your orange juice every freaking day. The early indication said if I could find a player that used a particular product, the company that produces that product loved that idea of that connection. So what I do, I surveyed thousands of athletes to find out who their favorite products were. Found thousands of surveys I sent out to find out injuries and different things. And I called those companies up based on an early indication on this orange juice scenario, which is a true story. So, like, just base some of your purpose and passion on an early indication that you may have came up with an idea that works. Get out of your head and increase your empathy and common sense and compassion to really think about what other people are thinking. My level of external distraction and my external taking in what other people are thinking and feeling is off the charts. And that is so key. And most people are so wrapped up in their own little motion picture, their own little video of their own life, of what's up, what's wrong, what you need. I'm hungry, I'm this, I'm that, I'm tired, I'm whatever. And you can't lead that way, and you can't get to the next level that way. And that's the key.
Well, I love the emphasis on curiosity. I love the emphasis on passion and purpose and empathy and compassion. These are all really important, not just adjuncts to a successful life, but the driving forces of a successful life. And I also really like the emphasis you made earlier on faith, because that's something that was always complicated for me, being somebody who was not raised particularly religiously, and I was raised Jewish, so faith kind of has a Christian connotation to it. But it was for me in recovery that I discovered faith is faith in life, faith in yourself, faith in the people in your life and the things that you do that bring meaning to your life. So the way that you talk about it sounds like that we have a lot in common when you're talking about curiosity, empathy, compassion, passion, purpose. Faith is a part of all of those things.
You can't have curiosity and stability at the same time. Like, oh, I'm really curious, but I just want everything to be just perfect. Like, no. Like, so, your formula, you're trying to boil water
right.
in an icebox. Like, no, fear, faith, pick one. So, and I think it's just critical, man, that, that you also, again, where happiness resides is in helping others. That's not part of your diet. You go in your office, you got busy work, but it only takes 10 minutes to go in your boss's office. Hey, boss, I got a lot of stuff going on, but is there anything I need to do to help you? Take something off your plate. Before you leave for work in the morning, honey, I got some stuff I got going on today, but I always have a little extra time. There's something I could take off your plate. Watch your wife. You'll be picking her up off the floor. Like, what's it take? Sign some autographs on your way to the ballpark. It's 10 minutes. Stop off at the Starbucks. The ladies make you coffee every day. You can increase the gratitude at some level there, right?
Well, if you get any indication that the Vitamin Water people are looking for a podcast host to sponsor, you can put me together with them, because Ryan will attest I drink this stuff like it's going out of style. So there's definitely a deal there.
There are a lot of people that are listening to your show, and there are a lot of people that have similarity characteristics. And when you put all those characteristics together, you'll match them up with a product. And when you call that product up, they're going to be interested.
Bingo. Brandon Steiner, this has been an enlightening conversation. I thank you for your time. You know, having such a busy day and taking the time to be 100% with us, it really is a testament to the fact that you are somebody who you show up for everything you do 100%. Thank you again, Brandon, for doing this. It's been great. Another wonderful conversation on the Harder to Breathe podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every Tuesday on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for joining us once again. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, you got it.